create quality products demanded by the world. How did such a slogan resonate through a daily working life? What qualities were there in the factories? What qualities were being offered after work at the high-speed points of consumption which were beginning to appear? Who was gaining control over life and work? Looking back at Grunwick's, the events which surrounded a photo processing laboratory offering a cheap and fast quality service. Looking back at the latter part of a Labour government giving way to something called Thatcherism, the story we see now has all the hallmarks of the way in which things were moving.
We've reached the halfway mark in our contest, and we'll have our fifth and last instant sale. And what's the fifth one that we have on? Well, our three contestants were not tempted by those goods. I've only had £18, so we obviously didn't want to risk it. But here's our last sale offer. So let us have a quick look at the money in front of our three contestants. Phyllis Hartnell from Lyme Regis in the lead on £54, closely followed by Ivor Geoffrey Machin on £39, and Cyril Golding has got 17, but Cyril has bought some goods. Let us see the money in front of our three contestants as we move into the final session. We'll have our first instant sale. John Benson, what's the first one tonight, please?
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, my government attached the utmost importance to maintaining progress in reducing inflation, to further improving the efficiency of the economy, and to strengthening industry, so as to restore competitiveness abroad and prosperity at home. They hope to see this assisted by further reductions in the level of wage settlements.
Increase of wages without increased labour is in contradiction to the policy of the government. There is no money available for wage increases, which inevitably involve price increases, causing an unending spiral in the home market and a loss of competitiveness abroad. German Ministry of Economics, March 1937. Loyalty, duty, diligence are our prize. It is my aim to educate many loyal subjects for the state and workers for the factory. All those who are headstrong or who fail to do their duty will be sacked as soon as they are caught. Industrial mottos of the Third Reich.
In our more recent history, it was TV which told a story of competitiveness, of paying our way, of working towards what they called a necessary realism. Unemployment was growing, cash limits beginning to be imposed, restrictions on trade unionists sought. For in 1977, with the Labour government in office, a new chapter in the history of work was being proclaimed, the year of the Beaver. The alternative, said the Labour Chancellor, was riots on the streets. He knew about the shields and CS gas being issued to the police. Progress, the demand for sacrifice and a greater national effort. The elusive tomorrow's world without the crisis progress was bringing. It was the year of the Royal Jubilee, an ideal time for loyalty, duty, diligence to be sold on TV. The government's election slogan had read, "Back to work with Labour."
As we've learned to our cost, in Japan, loyalty to the company is so strong that workers take less holiday time than their due and rarely go on strike. On TV sets alone, they turn out 1 million units every 2 months.
The commentator said total loyalty had been achieved in the land of a competitor. It wasn't here yet. We were just being introduced to it. The appliance of science, went one of the advertisements. Built by robots, simply years ahead. But our film is about things which were happening here. A strike and an occupation. The refusal of workers to comply with this labour process. But we only want to say one thing here about the strike. It was said by both union leaders and shop floor activists to be a tin-pot little company. A company that could have been lifted straight out of the Dickensian era. A company more suited to the days of the British Empire than to the modern civilised state. A company from the past, a dim, distant past, an anachronism in modern society. But that was the first thing we came to question.
And eventually won, because this man is from the past. He's from the distant past. He has no understanding of modern society.
For whilst this image of a Dickensian sweatshop served to bring trade unionists to Grunwicks in their thousands, it prevented us seeing what was really at stake. There we were, extras for an event the TV, Tory opposition, police and other less publicly known figures were staging. Only by reviewing the material we'd recorded, sifting through the picket line rhetoric, recreating the TV staging of events, did we come to see Grunwicks not as something from the past, but as a model for capitalism's future. To see how a strike for the most basic trade union rights, supported by all the official structures of the labour movement, could come to be so easily defeated.
The success of Grunwick's has been in offering a prompt service at a very competitive price. This has been based on employing immigrants at highly competitive, that is, low, wages. At a time when unemployment is high, and it is particularly high amongst the immigrant community in London, it is very natural that coloured workers should be willing to take jobs on these terms. Times editorial, June 30th, 1977. Grunwick Film Processing Laboratories of Willesden says it is seeking counsel's advice and would be prepared to instigate a test case to define a worker in terms of the Employment Protection Act. The truth is, said Grunwick's personnel manager, that we do not care what the strikers' opinions are. They have nothing to offer the company. We have no control over those people now. We will fight, said Mr. Ward, for what we consider to be right, both for the company and for the nation.
Really, they prove themselves foolish. It's a good peaceful picket this morning.
Yeah, really, we haven't done, even since 42 weeks, we haven't done any violence, you know. And what they are doing, look. Shame on you, really waste of public money.
It is.
It is really, we are the ratepayers, and we are paying them. Oh, but you got easy job, nothing to do, and push the people, that's all. That's why they are here.
They need some fascist stuff.
Fascist they need at the moment. They have no staff. They run out of staff.
June 1977. By now it was state aid keeping George Ward's photo processing factory working. The streets outside the factory made into the focus for the dispute. But it began here 1 year earlier, in the hottest, driest summer that Londoners could remember. In parks, not Hampstead Heath, people swam and took happy snapshots of one another. Those sunny days, said one of the strikers, created so much demand that you had to work twice as fast as usual simply to keep in step.
The strike started in August 1976. For years in the company, people were harassed all the time and they were pushed for work, and the wages were very low, and you were supposed to work long hours from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock. And all the time you were pushed around to do the work. And the efficiency of the company was 100%, over 100%. So that shows how the people were pushed to do work. And other things is, for example, conditions in the factory. If you wanted to go like to the toilet, you have to raise your hand, because if you go in the toilet and waste few minutes, that was in bad because of the company losing time on production. And you weren't given holidays in summer, because summer was a peak period for the company, and they didn't like people going on holidays in summer, because they will lose again production. And all the time you were pushed around to do the work.
The plant is modern, clean, and well equipped. Computerized chemical processing allows 360 films to be processed simultaneously. Computerization of the accounts, regulating the rapid flow of films through the factory. There is pop music in the corridors and an air of quiet efficiency.
Most of the strikers were women. And before I was not having any experience like that. In a way, how to talk about the problems we have got, and to face them in a way. As for example, some of the women, those who are working inside, they feel that it doesn't suit a woman to stand outside on the picket line, and it's useless, and that's not the thing which women should do. Picketing and all the things, I mean, going out and talking to the people, and it's a very, they think it's a very rough kind of life. It is not the proper way of living, and all the things, and we shouldn't fight for the rights when we are in another country, and all that stupid ideas they have got. Now the women who are in the strike, they think that no, they are proud about what we are doing. We are just fighting for our rights. That's what a great knowledge they have got now. In which way we want to live. The basic they learn from the strike, I think so.
The strike was simply about the need to obtain union recognition, said the strikers' union, Apex. Somewhere between the strikers' awareness and this officially promoted view, miners, printers, car workers, bank workers, nurses, in fact members from most trade unions, came in support of the Grunwick strikers.
I'm appalled by what I have seen. It's quite clear that a situation has been created outside this factory which puts at risk law and order in London. It's indispensable that the police should win, because if they do not, the whole structure of law and of peace in our country is going to be in the deepest of trouble.
It certainly, Mr. Dobby, does look pretty intimidating, what we've seen on the television screens.
But we start, again, with that continuing story of industrial strife at the Grunwick film processing plant in North London. It's been another morning of violent protest, though not so bad as yesterday's, as the dispute over union recognition nears the end of its 45th week. Some 2,000 people, pickets and their supporters, invited or otherwise, are again milling around outside the factory, and the police, also there in their hundreds, made 54 arrests.
And one of the great things that the media does do, I think, it makes quite clear what is happening, because most people have been able to see what has been going on outside that factory, see it for themselves on their television screens. Everyone has seen the nature, character, type of person who's at that place at the present time.
The TV picket begins.
With an adjustable lever and air vents. Think of steaks and chicken's legs and a glass of wine on a wall.
But it wasn't only stories of mobs and hooligans which had been created on summer evenings. In consumer magazines, the work going on inside the factory was being hidden from the reader.
Never have the great and increasing army of casual, snapshot camera users been better served than by today's camera shops and film processing laboratories. Deposit your film at the corner shop and it is quickly and eagerly transported around the rollers of some very expensive equipment indeed. Many thousands of pounds are being invested in extremely sophisticated and computerized equipment to give the camera user the prints he envisaged when he tripped the shutter. The June issue of the consumer magazine Which highlighted Grunwick's as one of the cheapest, fastest and most reliable photo processing services on the market, and as a company offering its customers best value for money.
workers invited all otherwise, and then running around outside the factory.
I want to make it clear that I would like to see marching down the street the General Council of the TUC. And behind them, the Parliamentary Labour Party led by the Prime Minister. By responding to the call of the Grunwick strikers to ensure that this industrial hooligan is removed off the scene.
It wasn't that they didn't come and go in ample numbers. After all, they were seeking union recognition. It was more their constant characterization of the place as a throwback, out of touch with modern trends, which had a hollow ring. Whether they were fooling us or themselves really didn't matter. Later that year, Scanlon and Jack Jones, one becoming a lord, the other a commander of the British Empire, placed themselves alongside Sir Michael Edwards, the managing director of BL Cars, on the same side of the fence. Was this the past or the future? 65 weeks into the Grunwick strike, things became a little clearer.
Well, we came out of the company, and since then we've been standing on the picket line. It's nearly 65 weeks now, with the promises made by the union and the TUC to resolve the dispute, but they haven't done so anything in action. And this is a protest to have them move and have a satisfactory conclusion to the dispute. That's why we've gone on hunger strike since 11:30, Monday the 21st of November.
Monday when we came here, they were here, all of them, Callahan or Barbara Castle, Miss Michael Foote, Dennis Hill. So many people, they were here from government. And when people asked them that, are you supporting or what you are going to do about Grunwick, they didn't reply, and their face was like a stone, very strong. And it seems that they don't like anything about Grunwick to do, or they don't like even to raise any point even about Grunwick. They want to forget all the Grunwick.
They went to the strike headquarters and told them that if anybody supported the mass lobby on the TUC, which was a decision by the strike committee, and they will be suspended. That is the democratic right of any individual trade unionist to lobby the trade union leaders. That was denied by Apex. And the other thing which I think it's quite funny, because we had a typewriter from Apex, which was being used in the office for nearly about 7 months now. And only yesterday, that's Tuesday, they went to the strike headquarters, and they think that one of their typewriter, electric typewriter, had broken down, and they had to take that away from us.
The Prime Minister told the Commons that the pickets should be identified with armbands and separated from the demonstrators who'd come to support them. This would mean, he said, that those who had latched onto this to turn it into a political battle could be kept clear of the industrial dispute.
The union concerned, Apex, have now agreed to limit the number of pickets to 500. They say they'll be issued with official armbands so they can be identified. Apex's General Secretary, Mr. Roy Grantham, agreed to this when he met the Deputy Assistant Commissioner at Scotland Yard this afternoon.
If mass picketing be resumed, any member involved will be suspended and lose strike pay. The strike committee shall take decisions on issues of policy only in the presence of an Apex appointed by the Union Area Secretary. There must be no demonstrations of any sort, including hunger strikes, against the TUC, as this would be an attack on our great movement. Letter from Apex to the Strike Committee, November 21st, 1977.
My late Lord Mayor, Your Grace, Lord Chancellor, Your Excellencies, my Lords, ladies and gentlemen. Yesterday, after I had attended the Remembrance Day service, someone who knows many lands came up to me and said, you know, these islands really are a haven of stability. Well, perhaps they don't always look like that to us at home. Certainly they don't to me. But perhaps we should have a better sense of perspective if we see ourselves as others see us. And anchored in that stability, the demeanour and the example of the monarch herself has been a principal factor in fusing together the varied elements in our nation and in giving us a sense of continuing equilibrium in our rapidly changing society. My Lord Mayor, we thank her for that.
We are the boss. And that was the attitude of them at that time. There was no difference between the leaders and the capitalist, ward.
I'll be a battery behind you all the way, he said. He supported them. Come back. And then, after action starts stepping up, MPs come and go. No Len Murray. Len Murray kept away. Just give them his words, and then he stayed away. He sits back, he remained silent. So that's how I said things is, that's how I look at it. It is very, very funny these days with these strikes and these union leaders. Because what made him, he sees and he knows it's not that these people don't see. They see and realize that it is a strike to be taken up. And it could be won. Because I've seen too many ways and means that this union could have won the strike. But what made them his back or themselves, I just don't know. I just don't know what is the reason. Why they refuse to win it, I can't understand. But all I can say, well, the only thing is that they are trying to please the capitalist state.
There is no right to strike enshrined in the law, a fact which many people had not realized before Grunwick.
It now seems clear that the Grunwick affair can only result in a humiliating defeat for the unions. George Ward has, so it would seem, won.
Ward's story is an important one because it is a microcosm of what is happening in the whole country, and the qualities he has shown, and which brought him success, deserves our study and our imitation. It is up to the rest of us now to consolidate the gains George Ward's resolution has won.
And let those who will be embarking upon trade union conferences and settling their wage claims, let them all remember, every wage rise which is not met by higher production is a ticket straight to the dole queue. We cannot throw away the prospects for the next decade because of short-term impatience over the next 12 months.
Policies were beginning to emerge that they would later call Thatcherism.
Slackers and troublemakers are threatening British industry with anarchy, according to many top bosses. Many businessmen fear a sharp drop in standards of discipline, Grunwick-style disorder, and the general determination on the part of many people to draw their pay for too little work. My view, said Sir Michael, is that there is a troublesome 1% who are damned irresponsible. They represent an inherent defection in the British industrial character. They are an insidious undermining factor.
But what of the wreckers? What of those who will not work? Those who strike without cause? Those who thump the elderly, smash in the windows, and thrive on a life of crime?
I mean, that sort of performance is obviously not on. Now, if we were to deliver a plan to the government where the workforce cooperate totally, it would still remain to convince the NEB and the government that they should back that plan. So I want to say here and now, this isn't a deal. I'm saying, frankly, through you right now to the workforce, for goodness sake, cooperate fully in this program. It's our only hope.
The crucial question is whether law and government are still strong enough to protect managements and workers who try, thus more effectively, to collaborate.
As Parliament opened that year with its usual pageantry, monetarist planners were decreeing that Britain, and British trade unionists in particular, were in need of a short, sharp economic shock. Whilst the Labour government was being reinstalled to Parliament, the forces staging the spectacle of Grunwicks were developing the monetarist theme of industrial law and order. Seen here at the inaugural dinner of a club which had backed Ward with financial and legal assistance, the National Association for Freedom, leading industrialists, ex-army officers, Thatcherite speechwriters, modern fascists who sought to free workers from union attitudes and create a loyal and willing workforce who could be seen putting the company first. Labour ministers could say little about the Freedom Association's goals. Grunwick's was a company operating with the kind of cooperative workers nationalised industry heads like Sir Michael Edwards had been publicly campaigning for.
They seem to want to go on working, and that they are proving that by going there and working. And why shouldn't they work? And why shouldn't they have the right to decide as human beings that they don't wish to?
We're a free people. We chose to work, and that's all there is to it. We don't want Apex. We are the ones that don't want the union.
Well, I don't use the union, but I don't want the union because I've got my freedom and everything. I don't see the point of joining the union as long as I've got my freedom.
With freedom, I've got all rights not to join the union.
Is it Apex in particular that you're against, or unions in general?
No, we don't want any union. We're a free people.
And we don't want any union.
And Apex is the worst communist union there is, and we don't want it.
But if I could come back now finally to our other...
this.
Wandering on motorbikes too.
Well, I've had plenty of experiences of strikes and disputes, but I've learned something this morning and seen something this morning that I've never seen in my experience as 50 years as a miner. And however a Labour government can stand by and see police act in this manner is just beyond me. It makes me believe that what we've seen this morning is the beginning of a cooperate state. That's the evidence. Because any government will stand by and see a slaughter like what we've seen this morning, must know that they're going to introduce policies that will need strong-arm methods to put them down. And it doesn't matter whether it's Mr. Callan or Mr. Powell, because you can see the headlines now in the nation's interest. And the nation's interest, it will be their interest protected by strong-arm men. And the next thing you'll see, as far as I can see, is the army. And the only way to defeat it is for the miners and other workers to down the tools. Somebody suggested a one-day strike. Well, I suggest a one-day strike, starting on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and weekend until this dispute is settled. And you won't get to Wednesday, and the government will find an excuse, and they'll settle it. And that's the only way it'll be settled.
Right in everything you said anyway, isn't it? What about his arrest? He wants someone Scargill's arrest.
It's a lot more effective stopping the coal, and never mind this game. They'll stop production, and then they'll come looking for you, and you mind you, they'll be picketing us. Throw me on the floor and then pick me up and need me along the road.
And that's when they got Scargill?
Yes, they took Scargill at the same time as me. And I don't know what happened to Scargill. I didn't even know he'd gone. But he certainly wasn't doing anything other than shouting, come back, until he saw picket abuse, and he just put his arm out and they had him. And they took me and a girl at the same time, a woman. And did the same with her, but they let her go more quickly.
There was this chap on megaphone bawled out, drag him out. The next thing I saw, there was this hand come over, grabbed a bit of air and just dragged her through. That was it. Well, it ain't bad. That's bloody democracy.
What the strike is now about is the duty of the forces of law and order, and that includes the Labour government, to uphold this factory. Grunwick's Managing Director, autumn 1977.
Looking beyond Ward, seeing Grunwick's as a launching pad for their ideas, was the National Association for Freedom.
It stands really to try and defend as best it can and to influence public and political opinion towards a return to a stable political and economic platform in this country where real prosperity can eventually be achieved. We feel that we've got a contribution to make, an increasing role.
The association's chairman, who was a supporter of the juntas in Chile and Argentina, had written a book advocating the unleashing of a monetary shock treatment in Britain, similar to that which is being carried out in Latin America. A treatment directed at the public sector and trade unions.
And we believe this to be a dress rehearsal for a much graver situation which will arise as a threat to any future Conservative government if and when the present government decides to call a general election.
They were free to appear on radio and TV as a band of honest do-gooders.
There is absolutely no doubt that it's a breach of the fundamental human right of freedom of choice to join or not to join any association or trade union, and we are not against anybody joining a
Oh,
trade
Lord,
union.
no. I think this, again, is very simple. 200 people is not a picket. A proportion of those, say 6 or 10, can constitute a picket. The others, the other 190, whatever you like, are not pickets, they're demonstrators, and the police have a duty to stop them obstructing the highway and to stop them from preventing other people going to work. As I understand it, they requested those
The
people...
association's director, Mr. John Gourier, who's been advising Mr. Ward, told me this afternoon what further steps his association was contemplating.
We're looking at the various legal implications at the moment to institute legal proceedings to join the organisers who incite this sort of violent picketing as accessories in cases such as attempted manslaughter or something as serious as that.
The television and the media are using Grunwick to illustrate violence, left wing, you know, bash the unions and all this and that, you know. But we could use it to illustrate the sort of the role of the state and how it develops and how it sort of has been behind sort of Ward since the offset, you know, the media, the television. We should be saying to workers, well, look, this is what they're going to do to us, you know. They're going to bloody have a go, and they're going to legalise their violence. That's it, you know.
Violence, it seems to me, is a word that is being used and in a particular way to describe the kind of struggles that working people have been involved in for 150, 200 years. That working people have been driven to resort to this kind of activity in order to organise themselves in the face of the kind of violence, if we want to use that word, that the capitalists, the mill owners, the big bosses will always try to impose upon them. And that's been particularly true where it's been people who've come into England, into Britain, to find work. It was true of the Welsh when they moved out from the valleys and from the coalfields. It was true of the Irish when they came over. They found themselves the minority and the most exploited. So it isn't simply that violence has erupted around an issue which concerns Asian people in one particular factory. I've no doubt that Keith Joseph would argue that there's no such thing as class struggle. But again, if you look back in history, his class came into being through struggle, and quite violent struggle. I mean, you go back to what's known as the English Revolution, time of Cromwell, that was the middle class revolution. And what could have been more violent than civil war? And it was civil war that was fought on behalf of the ancestors of Sir Keith Joseph and others to throw off the old feudal aristocratic class, if you like, or to put them into second place, that led to the ascendancy of the middle class. But in order to establish themselves and to build up their factories and their businesses during the 18th, 19th century, they had to begin to talk about law and order. But it was law and order which meant stability for them.
Two very important elements in the police function in this country are, firstly, that we must never, in any circumstances, appear to be the tool of government or the tool of any political party. And secondly, I believe that in all disputes, whether they arise from politics or industry, I think we also must be clearly seen to be impartial.
The ex-commissioner of the Metropolitan Police and future car tyre salesman, Sir Robert Mark.
And as a policeman, I don't think that what we call crimes of violence, though they naturally give rise to a great deal of heart-searching and regret, I don't think that they are anything like as severe a threat to the maintenance of tranquility in this country as the tendency of people to use violence to achieve political or industrial ends. Now, as far as I'm concerned, as a policeman of many, many years of experience, that's the worst crime in the book. I think it's even worse than murder.
London's Docklands, a place where real crimes could be unearthed. "13 workers had been sacked here for participating in a day of strike action against local hospital closures. They'd immediately occupied their works. With the managers off the site, they showed us company plans for the factory's closure and relocation to Enfield, with only half the original workforce. But it went beyond closures. In this desolate place, away from the glare of TV cameras, workers had discovered evidence of British Steel's plan to create a loyal and willing workforce.
There was this big drawer and it was padlocked up, weren't it? And we had a long session on whether we should break the padlock off or not, because you know, we didn't know how long we was going to be there and that. And in the end, we come to the decision that we should take a pair of bolt croppers to the padlock. And everybody looked at the drawer, you see. Nobody wanted to take the bolt croppers to the padlock. So eventually, two people sort of smashed the padlock off, and then nobody would open the drawer. It was sort of that in feeling, you know, that you mustn't do it, you know, you're a naughty boy sort of thing. And I opened the drawer, and as soon as I opened the drawer, there was about these 8 sets of hands that just went crunch and pulled out all these papers, and everything was flying about, you know, it was terrible. And we come across these documents. It was unbelievable. I mean, one of them, Ray Duffin, we had to take him home when we see what was in the files about him.
September 75, Mr. Roebuck contacted local Greenwich CID. Mr. Maynard from Scotland Yard came to see me, at which time he outlined the whole problem to him. He told me that he'd already checked on the 2 most likely persons responsible. Mr. Lutner, Special Branch have files on this man for his political activities. They have four complaints against him on file. Distributing socialist literature, disturbing the peace during demonstrations, taking part in illegal demonstrations.
Illegal demonstrations, already existing as a category on the CID computer. But it wasn't only the Special Branch who contributed to the Works Manager's files. The Economic League, an organisation blacklisting trade union activists, supported by the same sources as the National Association for Freedom, was also involved.
They say about Ray Duffin, docker, don't employ him. And as Paul said earlier, this is a ex-Dockland area. You're going to have thousands of dockers out of work. And yet it's apparently the policy of a nationalised industry not to employ dockers. I think the thing about those documents is the fact that as far as BSC is concerned, as far as the TUC movement is concerned, this plant is a nothing plant. I mean, 100 people, it's just not worth anything. And we've got those documents in a plant like this, which is 2 years old. It's got virtually no history, and yet they've got files like that on workers here. So what have they got in bigger, well-established British Steel places? And then it goes on to other nationalised industries as well. And the fact that taxpayers' money is being put into the Economic League, which it must be. I mean, you've got to put money into the Economic League to get information out. And that the Economic League is anti-nationalisation, and yet the Labour government is indirectly putting money into it.
Mr. C. Duffin, an ex-crane driver from Dockland area. At the time we took him into our employ, we were desperately short of mobile crane drivers, and in view of the above clearance, we took him into our employ. P. Lutner, known to have sold his socialist paper on company premises, but we failed to find any person to agree to having seen him actually selling the literature. J. M. Monk, although the attached references indicate good character, one is not aware of the implications of employing a docker. Can we please not take into our employment any person without first obtaining references that satisfy us of their background.
That is the kind of position we face from the BSC. What is clear from another file we found was that the union officials have time and time again worked in close cooperation with the British Steel Corporation to break the plant organisation down here.
It's been proven to us by various papers we've found here in the occupation here, such as when we was on strike on safety outside the gate in January, that the actual Banbury of the trade union turned around and said in a telephone conversation with management, well, we'll stand by what we agreed of yesterday and let them sweat it out. That means letting us sweat it out on strike outside the gate instead of what a trade union official should have done, which came out in support of us and supported us all the way down the line. But he hasn't supported us all the way down the line. What he's done is supported management all the way down the line.
We are looking at every conceivable thing that we are doing, going over it with a tooth-comb. And the trade union side is committed to seeing that we are manned eventually to international manning standards. It is the manner in which it is done. And if, at the end of the day, it means less jobs, which it probably will, it is no great worry to anybody here if it is done in a correct, proper manner.
I mean, what they've been saying is, they were saying give a year for the nation, wasn't they? And 6 months hard work, and a year, the year of the Beaver, the eager Beaver. But I mean, where is the line coming from the management, especially nationalised management, when they're using scabbles organisations like the Economic League, and also using the special branch now? I mean, it just shows actually that, the strengths that they will go to now.
And in their efforts to ensure at all stages of selection of their workforce that they're picking the right people to get up to the manning levels of the most efficient industry in the world, we'll say Japanese and American, they use the police and the Economic League to provide any information, political information, etc. And I think the aims are pretty clear. That for them it is a necessary step that they will make.
Workers at Greenwich, initially looking for work, finding a management union special branch combination, knew that they couldn't win. Sometime later, it emerged that not only was the plant closed, but the site was sold to the Metropolitan Police for use as a riot training ground.
And they're used during this dispute, because these officers that wear CO on their shoulders are nothing but a bunch of military thugs. Right. They are sent into this dispute to smash their way through. They are supposed to be used, we were told, for anti-trade, anti-terrorism activities. There is no terrorism going on here. The only terrorism going on in the Willesden area is by the ruthless bloody police. That's the only terrorism that we know in Willesden at the present time. And we don't intend to stand by and watch it happen. People have got the right to join a union in 1977, and Mervyn Rees and the rest of these people that dispatched these uniformed thugs into Willesden will have to understand that lesson. Arrest us if you like, but I promise you, for everyone you send down, we'll send 10 more up the road to meet you. So don't be under any illusion that we're short of numbers. Our numbers are 10 million strong, and we'll use that 10 million if it takes us a whole bloody year to win this dispute.
Labour Home Secretary and former Minister for the North of Ireland, Merlin Rees.
What would you, as a Conservative minister or as a member of a future Conservative government, do in a similar situation?
I hope, observe the law as I hope this government is going to do.
What are my main thoughts about the violence that you saw last week?
Well, this is something. This sort of violence does the whole thing no good. If there is, it certainly, it gives the impression to the world that the trade union movement is like this, and it's not. The trade union movement exists for trying to settle matters. I want to see this settled peaceably in the tradition of the trade union movement here and everybody else. That's the way it always ends up. Yeah. The way. I must make one thing clear, because I learned this in Northern Ireland. The operational control of the police must be in the hands of the police. Now then, what I can do is discuss it with the experts, as long as it's quite clear that the operational control is theirs.
Since 1912. Right. And I've never been so disgusted in all my life.
Right. What's that got to do with me?
You're part of the government, and you're not upholding these people that are helping us.
It's the government supporting this lot against the police.
But the police have the support to do this, but it's not as easy as that.
Only just have they had the support. They didn't have the support in the beginning, you know. At least that's what it appeared around.
Well, it may have appeared that way, but it's not true.
You expect to run into this sort of reception from people, Mr. Rees, when you come down this morning? Meeting people like the old man there, who is obviously concerned with people.
Oh, I'm sure that's right. Oh, I'm sure that's right. Yes, wouldn't you? Because that man there is far more typical general feeling overall in the labour movement than perhaps some people might think. So there's no problem. I give my full support to the police in a very difficult situation.
This has nothing to do with trade unionism. This is not trade unionism. What we have to get rid of are the wreckers in society. And we all of us, all of us have to combine to get rid of those wreckers and see that they don't have their way. Trade unionists as well as others.
The cost of a high-speed, competitive service, the criminalisation of trade unionists, was underway, creating the ground for an increase in police violence. Not that it wasn't being shown on TV. In a democracy, it had to be shown to be made popular.
The police must enforce the law. If a member of parliament breaks the law, he will be arrested. If a trade unionist breaks the law, he will be arrested. And it makes no difference what his category is. The police are impartial in these matters.
On June 22nd, Tribune MP Audrey Wise was arrested, locked up in a police bus and prevented from talking to reporters. By the left, Quick March read The Guardian's headline to Mrs. Wise's arrest.
You don't tolerate absence of freedom. By the time freedom is absent, you've no choice about anything. Your only choice is to fight for it while you've still got some. When I first went into Parliament 18 years ago, there were only 7 or 8 extreme left-wingers. We all knew who they were. We just thought that it was rather a characteristic of the British system that we had 1 or 2 extreme left-wingers. Now I believe there are about 80 members of the Tribune group. You know what happens? Yes, I am. I am saying that if you go along the socialist road, there's only one way for it to end up.
About the arrest of an MP, Labour ministers remained silent. They were soon to be involved in the rooting out of left-wing elements from their party.
That talk to us and tell us what's happening.
Cricklewood Sorting Office, the place through which, for the year-long duration of the dispute, Grunwick's mail-order business had continued to pass. Inside, postal workers were meeting to discuss their handling of ward's work. Having left the decision up until then in the hands of national and regional union officials, they are about to decide for themselves. In the words of a Yorkshire miner, the press come picketing us.
What do you think you've got to gain after you've had the advice from Tom Jackson that you should be going back to work? Are you expecting to stay there though until the end of your shift? Are you going to stay there until the end of your shift? Shut up. What's that? Keep quiet for 2 minutes, that's all we want. Christ the fucking Christ. Piss off!
In the face of the decision at yesterday's meeting, are you still prepared to go ahead with this action now, despite instructions from the union and the fact that
each branch is autonomous until itself. They make the decision, our branch has decided. Thank you, gentlemen. Would you be prepared to sit in?
Only 17 voted against taking this action at blacking Grunwick's mail. There were personal considerations, such as their wages, and there were 1 or 2 exemptions amongst it as well, and the possibility, of course, of possibly getting the sack. But even after the decision was taken, that was it. The branch was solid behind it, and we blacked Grunwick's mail.
I mean, you can talk and talk, but when it comes down to it, if you refuse to handle their work, that's when they're going to start, you know, moving, and start acting upon it. I mean, all this saying, you know, what we're doing is scandalous, and all the way the press is slagging us down. I mean, they don't give a damn about a small, you know, firm like that. We could go out of business tomorrow, but they know what we're doing today. Blacking this work, you know, it's the whole future of the trade union movement. You know, we want to support these people. And, you know, if it's the law or not the law.
People are really worried about the law because the telegrams and support we've had from the rest of the country, it's been phenomenal, really, isn't it?
From all over. And I think it's shown them that the power of working people. I mean, there's one George Wall, and there's an old saying somewhere, we're many, they're few. There's 11 million of us. That's not counting the kids. These are the issues that really count.
I don't believe the Cricklewood men will continue with their blacking. I think they'll do what we asked them to do this morning, which is what the government has asked us to do. Keep the situation calm during the court of inquiry so as not to allow Grunwicks any excuse whatsoever but to accept the decision of that court. We've always been concerned about the legal position. For instance, we have never as a union broken the law. We suspect that our members at Cricklewood are doing that, and we would hope that they wouldn't. Sure, we're concerned about large fines which could be imposed upon the union if we were seen to be in the thick of this particular fight.
If the law is being flouted by the postal workers, what in your view should be done? How should that action be approached? Should an alternative method of getting the post to the factory be introduced, or is this action through the courts?
Well, of course, the post office could prosecute any postal worker who, contrary to his duty, delays or detains a postal packet. There's no doubt about that. If the post office won't prosecute, the Attorney General can. And one or the other of them, in my view, ought to take that action. You've got to say the law must be enforced, it must be obeyed. You can't say we will sacrifice one man or one firm because if we tried to enforce the law, there'd be an unholy row and a lot of people would suffer. How can it be an aspect of the common good that you should sacrifice one individual or one company in order to avoid spreading unpleasantness?
The Post Office Board clearly hope the men's union will be able to persuade them to resume normal working, but it's understood the management is prepared to go ahead with the suspensions if there's no voluntary return. The Attorney General, Mr. Sam Silkin, said it would be totally wrong and counterproductive to take legal action against the postman at this stage. But clearly there are still a number of hurdles to be overcome before the court can begin its work in the knowledge that illegal activity and violence have stopped completely.
On July the 5th, we were told that in the name of order and the common good, the post office management had imposed a lockout at the Crookerwood sorting office. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, in an operation codenamed Pony Express, the National Association for Freedom, in conjunction with the police, were allowed to remove Grunwick's mail from the Crookerwood depot and redistribute it throughout the country. All that remained locked up in the sorting office was the mail of the other 10,000 residents in the area. Changes were underway at the post office. New technology, computerisation, mechanisation. In December, we were told that 22 members of the Crookerwood UPW were fined a total of £1,300 by a union disciplinary tribunal. The tribunal ruled that industrial action should in future not be taken without the expressed authority of the National Executive Committee. In February, we read that a bill was being introduced into Parliament to clarify the legal position of postal workers to strike. The bill made solidarity action illegal. In a letter circulated to all union branches, the General Secretary Tom Jackson wrote, "The bill will not extend any entitlement to post office workers to indulge in a secondary action of the type engaged in at Grunwick's or the boycott of South African mail proposed last year. We have never done anything like this before," wrote Jackson, "and I hope we will never do anything like it again."
That what design now, we have to design new way. That what we have to do to make this leadership work for us. That's all trade union movement workers in their hand. And they have to decide now. Are they going to do anything for us or not? Because workers just elect them and when they got post, they don't care about workers.
15 months since the hottest, driest summer that Londoners could remember. The sunny days, creating so much demand that you had to work twice as fast as usual simply to keep in step. The strikers' needs were being conveniently forgotten. Workers on strike for over a year, disciplined, and seeing other workers disciplined by their unions, were being made ready for sale back to the company.
Now, George Ward is a very stubborn man, but he is not going to throw away £750,000 by letting that company go broke. The reality is he's got a good company and he needs our members who are good workers for him and who he has not criticised as far as their work is concerned at any time in front of the Court of Inquiry. He said they were good workers. The reality is if he wants to get back on the expansion plans that he had when this strike started over the attitude of management, then he needs our members back. So once he's got to swallow the union, he might just well have back good workers to support that situation. We'll say to him, look, as natural turnover takes place at your company, and there's a high rate of turnover naturally in this kind of industry, we want our members to come back to fill those vacancies. As you expand the company once again, we want our members to come back. Good people, some of whom he very much wants. Some who have been told during the course of the dispute, if you'd have stayed with us, you'd be members of management today. That's how much they appreciate some of our members. George isn't going to throw all that away for nothing once he's lost on the issue of recognition.
Right, as we've said repeatedly, George Ward is welcome to stay in Brent processing films for the year 2000, provided those workers are back inside that company and in a recognised situation, getting paid decent wages and able to negotiate as trade unionists with their union. Then we're happy for George to stay around. I'll even send my films to him.
Once again, I would like to congratulate are not getting paid by anyone, who are losing time from work and wages in order to defend a vital principle, and that is the principle that the trade union movement struggled and fought for throughout its long and bloody history. The right to be a member of a trade union, the right to participate in a trade union, and to have some say in determining your wages and working conditions.
Good evening. The government and the TUC have unveiled their new agreement on pay and industrial relations. It's the product of weeks of negotiations which took place against a background of growing industrial unrest. The TUC, meanwhile, will give guidance to unions aimed at improving industrial relations and preventing strikes, particularly in vital public services.
In answer to criticism of the conduct of some of this winter's disputes, the TUC has drawn together a new charter of good behaviour. This warns that strikes should be a weapon of last resort. Ballots before a strike is called are strongly recommended. Picketing should, it says, be confined to the premises of the parties to the dispute or to their suppliers or customers, except in what are called exceptional circumstances. Mr. Callaghan says he's going to start talk soon with the TUC and with industry on the first stage of the annual national assessment of Britain's economic prospects.
The government, the TUC and the CBI will meet before Easter each year to look at the economy. One inference is that it might influence pacing.
Will be a year in which, with moderation, we shall continue the improvement in the standard of life that has already begun. But more, we shall signal to the rest of the world that Britain is on the way back. And that news, I assure you all, will be as welcome to our many...
More news of Britain on its way back. Further years of moderation. TV setting the tone of a national collaboration. Compete for success, worker against worker, areas and countries set against each other. To loyalty, duty, diligence sought by the modern state.
Loyalty to the company is so strong that workers take less.
Cheaper, faster quality products, bringing increases in work discipline, whether enforced by massive police operations or through the more sophisticated management-union combination. This was the cost of a quick film delivery service. A price demanded of even more people under the next, soon-to-be elected, government.
We are at last becoming more competitive. Don't throw it all away now. That is our history. That, I believe, is our destiny.